So a couple of months back, my brother Finn came to me and he said, "Hey Jack, I want to make a film about climate change." For a long time, I've wanted to cover climate change on this channel, but I've always felt dubious. Whilst climate change is clearly one of the most important issues of our generation, I had a lot of questions. Would we be able to do the story justice? Do we know enough to talk about it? Would it be interesting and engaging? And ultimately, was there much point? Can we really do anything about climate change? However, through much persistent persuasion from my brother, we decided to embark on the project, and we soon found ourselves on the front lines of protests in London, and then on the front lines of climate change in the southernmost parts of Greenland in freezing temperatures. And I wouldn't go back on any of it. It's been an unbelievable experience. We've certainly learned a lot, and we owe a lot of that to WWF, who supported the project. But without further ado, I'm going to jump behind the camera and pass the reins over to my brother Finn to tell you the story of our changing climate.
Since I was a kid, my mum has taken me with her to campaign for action on climate change. That's her, and unfortunately that mop of hair next to her is me. She always taught me to stand up for what I believed in, to dare to imagine a better world to live in. The truth about climate change is it's really easy to be overwhelmed by the scale of the problem. It's easy to think that it won't affect you in your lifetime. However, we are the first generation to grow up learning about it, and we're also the last generation who really get the opportunity to tackle it. As our world leaders prepared to meet for the largest climate conference in history, we decided to partner with WWF to make a short film. Together with the help of my flatmate Tim, who is a cinematographer, and my brother Jack, who's a filmmaker, we joined a science research trip, traveling out to Greenland. We wanted to understand how climate change is affecting our planet right now, and what we as individuals can do about it. This is our changing climate. The effects of our changing climate can be seen all over the world, whether it's increasingly worse storms, droughts, wildfires, or floods. Perhaps one of the biggest threats we face is sea level rise. This is a result of the gradual melt of vast regions of ice, such as Greenland. In the last 10 years, Greenland has experienced its fastest ever melt, both of its ice sheet and the surrounding sea ice. While the loss of sea ice threatens wildlife and the traditional practices of the local people, it's the thinning and the melting of the ice sheet that is threatening to increase our global sea levels. And that is a problem that affects everyone, everywhere. We've just arrived in Kangerlussuaq and we're about to check into the Kangerlussuaq International Science Support and work out the plan ahead for the next week. Joining us on the trip would be one of Britain's leading glaciologists, Dr. Alan Hubbard, and the head of polar operations for WWF, Rod Downey. Alan has been visiting Greenland for the last 20 years, setting up vital experiments in order to investigate the rate at which the ice sheet is melting and how this will affect our planet. The next morning, we wasted no time, meeting early at the airport in order to board a helicopter headed north to a glacier known as Jakobshavn Isbrae. Jakobshavn is one of the fastest retreating glaciers in the world. Scientists have been tracking the speed of retreat for over a century, and it's this data that allows us to see how rapidly the loss of ice is increasing year by year. So tonight we're going to camp out next to the glacier, and what are we going to be doing when we're there?
Yeah, we've got a night or two here, and the idea is basically there's a bunch of time-lapse cameras that have been set up at the front to monitor the retreat and the carving at the front. And last month, a really massive iceberg, 14 kilometre squared, broke off the front. So it'd be really neat to get that imagery and to see how the front and the glaciers responded to that carving event.
We are on our way now to two of the time-lapse cameras to download their data, which will show us a record of what's been happening to the glacier since 2006. How long have they been here for?
Actually here for only a couple of years.
And so they're taking a photo of this glacier every 30 minutes?
30 minutes, that's right, and we can take these images, we can map out the front of the glacier as it's retreating backwards in time. We can also do some clever analysis, feature tracking, and see how fast the glacier is moving.
In 2008, the team that set up these time-lapse cameras recorded the largest ever calving event to be caught on camera. To give you a sense of scale, this is an image of New York. In the space of just over an hour, a chunk of ice the width of Manhattan and twice the height of its skyscrapers broke off. It's events like these that have led to this glacier retreating faster in the last 10 years than it has in the last 100. So we're standing here now looking at the face of the Jakobshavn Glacier, and I can see in front of it icebergs have carved off. Tell me a bit about that process. What happens when a section of the glacier carves off?
Basically that big terrestrial reservoir, that storage of water, that's just shunting straight into the ocean, and unfortunately that means rapid sea level rise.
It's important to say that calving is a natural event. However, it's being sped up by a number of different processes, such as warmer water that cuts away at the front of the glacier, and by melt lakes that form on the top and drain down, often reaching the bedrock, which can lubricate the ice towards the sea. Alan explained that if all of the ice in Greenland were to melt, it would raise our global sea levels by more than 21 feet. That is enough water to submerge some of our largest coastal cities, such as New York, London, and Sydney, or in some cases entire countries such as Bangladesh or Kiribati in the Pacific. Having retrieved the data that we needed, we headed back to base camp in order to set up tents for the evening ahead. Had a little explore and found somewhere to camp, and as we're setting up the tent, there's this amazing mist coming in from over there, covering the glacier, and we're shrouded in cloud. After breakfast, we left early to travel this time to the edge of the Greenland ice sheet itself.
We're going to visit about 3 or 4 different sites on the ice sheet that I've set up GPS, weather stations, basically instruments for monitoring what the ice sheet is doing.
How long have you been running the experiments we're going to visit?
Some of the sites, especially this first one, has been running on and off for 20 years. So this is the longest Greenland ice sheet monitoring experiment there is, basically.
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. So we're stood up here on the Greenland ice sheet, and Alan, the scientist behind me, is working on some of his experiments that are measuring the levels of melt and the speed of melt. So, Alan, you just drilled that into the ground, this contraption.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. What does it do?
This is a precision GPS, so it's like your handheld ones, uses satellite signals orbiting the Earth, comes in here, but this thing allows us to work out where the center of that antenna is at millimeter precision.
Alan's experiment is actually incredibly simple. He places a 15-foot long pole into the ice sheet. The GPS on top tells us which way the ice is moving, and the pole itself tells us how much it's melting. Over the last decade, Alan's data has recorded over 140 feet of melt, which is the equivalent to the height of 10 double-decker buses. After helping Alan reinstall his experiments, we left the ice sheet in search of a good place to spend our last night in Greenland. So tonight we're camping here on the edge of the glacier. It's a rather picturesque spot to be camping. We kind of grew up being told about climate change and how big of a threat it is, but I think often people aren't sure what they as individuals can do about it.
Climate change is certainly one of the biggest challenges that we face currently as humanity, but I'm actually quite optimistic about this. The technology is there for us to deliver most of our needs without burning fossil fuels already. We just need the political will to move forward with increasing and investing in renewable energies, and I'm really confident that your generation has the capacity to tackle this huge issue in front of us.
Rod was right. If change was to happen, then our generation would need to stand up and show that we care.
People are gathering in cities around the world. They're rising up in hope and solidarity and determination to change everything.
We are standing at the front of the climate march. Everyone is gathered here to fight for a better, cleaner future.
This amount of people on a Sunday when it's like this weather, it means something. It's amazing, and it's happening all around the world.
On the 12th of December 2015, the conference in Paris became the first in history to get all 200 countries to sign a binding agreement. Paris is not the end of the story. It's now more important than ever that we continue to put on pressure and make sure these promises are kept, to transition away from fossil fuels towards 100% renewable energy. In other words, this is just the beginning.